Thanks for joining us for another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. Joining us today is, introduce yourself.
Cameron Welch.
And you are with?
The United States Marshal Service.
It says that all over your shirt, and we know who you are. Introduce yourself.
Andy Kahn, this is the last swan song of 2024, right? This is it.
That's right. Don't start any rumors that we got canceled or anything.
That's April Fool's. That was one of the best April Fool's joke ever.
So tell us about being a U.S. Marshal.
Well, it's the best job in law enforcement, hands down. We get to go out and track fugitives every day and try to make our community a safer place.
How did you end up? Tell us how you ended up where you are.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, as a small kid, I always wanted to get into law enforcement, and I was looking at what path would be the best route to go. And I started off in the military in the 90s and got out and became a Harris County Precinct 1 constable and worked there for about 4 or 5 years, and then moved over to the Houston Police Department. And it was at that time I really knew that I was enjoying this career path in law enforcement, and I thought, what was the best agency to be a part of? And it was definitely the United States Marshal Service.
That's the part you like the most, is apprehending someone rather than like doing a case or whatever?
Yeah, it's not even so much just the apprehending side of it, but it's getting closure for the people that were directly, impacted by violent crime.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a dangerous thing to do.
Most definitely.
So you've been with the Marshal's Office for how long now?
I am approaching my 22nd year.
Wow.
Yep, since 2003.
So how does it work? Is there certain things that go on every day, or you're kind of like, the way I liked it, here's what I know what's happening, it's what I don't know that I'm afraid of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with us.
So.
Well, do you get like a normal day, would you get a list of people that are fugitives and this is where we think they are, or how does it work?
So there's a lot of different divisions within the Marshal Service. So are you speaking just directly?
What do you do?
Well, I'm a deputy assigned to the Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Fugitive Task Force. It's a task force here in Houston that was developed in 1993 in conjunction with the Houston Police Department and the Harris County Sheriff's Department. Since that time, it's grown tremendously. We have about 17 local law enforcement agencies participating, and we're located in downtown Houston, and we work very closely with Houston area Crime Stoppers.
So you're going out to get the worst ones.
Absolutely.
Basically.
Yes, sir. Yes. Just as the name says, Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Task Force. Any warrant that's filed in Harris County that's violent in nature gets routed to the task force and assigned to our investigators.
Is there a case that really stands out in your mind that you'll always remember?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of them.
I bet.
Yeah, there are. And I've been assigned to Gulf Coast since 2006. So I've been a part of some big cases here in our area. But one that stands out particularly is William Greer. We featured him.
Operation Missing Toe.
That's correct.
Who comes up with those titles?
Just some deputy that's bored. Yeah.
It's like the FBI. I always wonder how they come up with the bank robber. They'll call him something.
You got to
like
have a
the
catchy
Dapper Dan,
nickname, It's a catchy nickname that, gets everybody's attention.
That case really got a lot of media attention. It was on 48 Hours.
That's correct. It was also on America's Most Wanted. We had featured him numerous times through, major network shows just to try to generate tips in regards to his location.
Now, this is a guy who killed his wife.
It was a live-in girlfriend.
A live-in girlfriend.
That's correct. And he had 2 small children at the time from a previous marriage, and both children were in his home at the time of the homicide.
And this was in Cleveland?
No, the actual murder took place in his residence in Spring.
In Spring.
And the last known contact that anyone had with him, which was law enforcement, during this encounter on a back road, it was in Cleveland, Texas.
How long was he missing?
Since approximately 2006. Yeah, and we captured him in 2017 down in Mexico after featuring him as a U.S. Marshals Top 15 Most Wanted.
Tell us about that. How did that happen in Mexico?
Well, like I said, we were generating tips throughout the country as we were featuring him pretty regularly, and we had information, as far as Ohio, that there were sightings up there, all the way from Georgia, Louisiana, Kentucky. And we were just really persistent, conducting interviews and keeping his face, in the media. And then we generated some information. It was a tip that came through that he was down in Mexico. And, we worked with some counterparts in that country, and we were able to develop a good address. And
he denied being him at first.
He actually did. He did. And hence the name Operation Catch a Toe. That was his demise. We actually had law enforcement remove his shoe, and the New York Times had called me the day of and congratulating us on the capture, and they were saying, "How did you know you had your guy?" And I said, "The toes don't lie." It was the truth.
He was missing a toe.
He was missing a toe.
Now, what part do you go through leads and then sort of determine, this sounds good, this is nothing, we need to go down this road? Do you do that part of it too?
Yeah, that's correct. Being a seasoned investigator, like most of the guys at the task force, they're pretty good at being able to sift through a lot of the tips that come through. We're not going to discredit any of them. But
Right.
We're going to look at, but some, need a little more focus and attention. And, that's what we just try to do.
How much do you need before it's like, okay, we're actually going to go to Mexico or wherever to try to apprehend this person? How much do you need to know?
Well, you also got to look at which country you might be dealing with.
Right.
Sometimes fugitives run to different countries, and we might not have diplomacy with some of those countries, so it can hurt our investigation. We try to convey to victims and families of these cases that we're going to do everything in our power to do our job and to try to bring these people back to seek justice. But sometimes, it can be quite difficult. And, I've told families before, sometimes the hardest part is not going to be locating them, because we're pretty good at that craft.
Right.
But it's where we find them, and
Yeah.
then maybe being able to get them back on
What's
U.S.
that
soil.
process like when you find them in another country? What do you have to do?
Well, obviously we can't talk about a lot of our investigative techniques, but there's a lot
How about
of
the extradition procedure? You have somebody.
correct.
Now what?
Right. We're going to work closely with Harris County and the district attorney's office. We need to make sure that it's going to be a fully extraditable case, that they indeed, want this person back here in Harris County, because sometimes there's limitations. As long as that we know that we have the backing from the charging element, then we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we can, work with that country.
Are there a lot of countries that if you fled, that they're not going to turn you over?
I don't know about a lot of countries. They all have their own certain little nuances.
Yeah.
But it would be really hard for me to be able to know. It's really until I encounter that I've got a fugitive that might be in a country, and where we go from there.
Are some countries pretty okay with it? Like, okay, yeah, if this person's a criminal, and yeah, take them away. We don't want them.
Through my experiences, I've had good luck, with a lot of those countries. Think about it, at the end of the day, a lot of these places don't want our criminals in their
Right,
country
yeah.
either. So
Sure.
Some of them will only extradite if the death penalty is removed from the
Yeah.
equation.
right, there are, like I said, little nuances in treaties and things of that nature that can dictate whether or not a certain country might want to participate. But
Have you had somebody like you know where they are, you're there, they're there, and they run away at that point, and they're successful at running away?
oh yeah, we've had we had a top 15 most wanted case in recent years where an individual was wanted up in Illinois and then made it through Mexico, and there was reason to believe is now in the Philippines. So it's definitely a cat and mouse.
There are people that are just good at it, I guess, right? They know how to sort of work the system and elude
Right.
authorities.
Yeah, some are definitely better than others. What I try to tell some of the younger deputies when they come on board and they start working these fugitive investigations, it's very costly. Very
I bet,
costly
yeah.
for a guy to be on the run, and
Yeah.
you've got to have people that want to support that endeavor.
Right.
And so, a a lot of the times they find themselves truly on their own because they can't get that support.
Yeah.
Or they use a lot of manipulation and lying to get other people to support them.
And I've seen news stories where people, they're on the run for 30 years and then they're apprehended, and it's almost a relief in a way. It's, you know, they don't have to hide anymore. And right? It's sort of, because it would be so hard to keep doing that.
Oh, for sure. When we brought William Greer back here to the United States, we were over at Intercontinental Airport. And we were walking him back through the terminal, and he looked over at myself and a couple of my partners and mentioned that he was really glad that it was over with, and that he recognized all three of us from, like, In Pursuit with John Walsh and America's Most Wanted and some of these segments. But,
oh, you know, if you're on the run, you're going to watch those shows, right?
I guess.
About me?
That's right.
What's the scariest one you ever had?
There's been unfortunately a lot of them. We've had some fugitives that, you know, will do anything in their power to get away.
Yeah.
We had one in Conroe that was at a community out there that was wanted for sexual assault of a child, and he was able to escape the residence when we were executing the felony warrant, and a foot pursuit ensued, at which time he actually jumped into Lake Conroe.
What?
And started to swim away from us. Well, of course, we're all in our tactical gear, and we couldn't, you know, nor would we want to jump in after him, but it was the first time in my career I was actually able to commandeer a bass boat. And we went out there and we circled him, and finally he got real, you know, fatigued and got into the boat, and he was bleeding profusely from his arm. He had actually taken a razor blade and cut from elbow to his wrist, attempting to commit suicide after he had swam away from us. So, you know, we get him into the boat and get him into custody, but now we, you know, our roles have to change. We have to now, you know, provide this medical care and attention to him. And, you know, then he started vomiting blood, and we're like, what is going on with this guy? So I got to fly in life flight from Conroe to Ben Taub Hospital with him.
Wow.
And when we got there, the doctor had done some x-rays and said that he had actually had swallowed the razor blades.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of these guys will go to great length. I had another guy jump out of a third-story window and, like, literally Superman'd out the window.
Wow.
And broke his foot and ran on a broken foot through an apartment complex.
I guess I realize when you show up, it's over for them. I mean, it's
oh, I've had them. Literally, I've jumped out on some guys before, and they give up. We get them into custody, and they said, I knew it was over when I saw you, Deputy Welch. I said, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, I watched this TV show, and I knew y'all were looking for me. So it's.
Do you have some people that are just like, okay, I mean, they're just sort of, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Sometimes, you know, they'll get word that we're looking for them through, you know, other avenues, and they'll contact our office and they'll self-surrender. You know, which is the best way for everyone involved. You know.
Has social media made a big difference in your guys' investigative powers and tools, or is it?
Well,
does it play a role?
I'd like to say everything plays a role.
Right.
And one thing that I can mention is every fugitive hides differently. So as an investigator, what I try to remember is, you know, you might catch one guy one way, but then you catch a guy, you know, totally a different way. The thing to remember as to become a good investigator is to take anything and everything you did to do a successful capture and put that in your toolbox and use it and build off of that. So obviously after 20 years, my toolbox has gotten pretty large.
I bet.
But you're right. I mean, there's new things that happen as time goes on that, you know, you have to learn. There's a learning curve for sure.
You probably hear from a lot of people. There's, you know, on social media, there's a lot of amateur sleuths and, you know, people that like to follow crime stories and that sort of thing. I'm sure you probably get tips from people that do podcasts and all the true crime kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've been working with the media since 2006 in all different facets, and they are a huge asset to our mission for sure, because they help generate tips. They keep the story going. They keep the momentum, you know, in the community. And so, you know, I've always found them to be a big help. Sometimes they want to help more than they should. But
do a lot of people play the, oh, it's not me, you got the wrong person? I mean, do they try to go down that road?
Oh yeah, like I said, the toe doesn't lie. You know, I mean,
it's my evil twin.
Yeah.
So when sometimes I know like the media does like some ride-alongs or things of that nature, and so what happens when, let's just say Randy Wallace wanted to go on one of your expeditions? What would happen?
Well, we meet up, we get our cases, we brief, we start looking at, where we're going to start, our fugitive investigation, and we get out in the field. A lot of times it's starting with interviews, going out and meeting with people that may have been victimized, going out there and just connecting surveillance, doing everything that we can to try to generate any activity or any tips. Sometimes it's as simple as going by a location where maybe the crime had occurred and the individual standing outside. I mean, it can happen really fast, or it can be for many, many, many years.
Do you go out looking for just one defendant at a time, or do you have, like, let's say you've got cases on the north side. Do you try to, well, we're going to be over there anyway, so maybe we should try to get so-and-so and so-and-so?
Well, our task force is pretty large, and so every investigator that is assigned to Gulf Coast carries a pretty large caseload.
Yeah.
Being in the fourth largest city in the country, we're pretty busy. And not to mention, there's other task forces that the Marshal Service have in the other 93 districts in our country. And so as fugitives leave their area, we find them here in our backyard.
Yeah.
So those are collaterals. So we get a lot of collaterals from other districts.
I bet.
So sometimes, a case that might be, you've been working on for a couple weeks, it might be at a moment's, notice where it's like slowing down dramatically, but a collateral comes in and you've got that take precedence.
So you would go out and arrest someone that the crime wasn't here. It's just like you get a call from New York and they say, hey, so-and-so's in Houston, and you take care of that for them. You pick them up.
That's correct. Yes. Our numbers are coming in already for the closeout of this year, and just our unit, just Gulf Coast, which compiled about 50 or 60 investigators, we're approaching 1,500 physical arrests, and those are violent fugitives, violent, felons.
You kind of need the element of surprise on your side, right? That's you sort of have to do this. You catch them when they're least expected, kind of thing, right?
That's correct, and I think that attributes to our high success rate. Being a local police officer, getting dispatched that call, and being in your patrol car, and the thoughts are going through your mind about what you're gonna, get into when you get there.
Yeah.
You never know, right? Or the car that you just stopped and what the individual's been involved in. For us, we know who our target is, and we pick the time and the place. There's been times where we've seen individuals and at that given moment, it might not be the right opportunity at the right time.
Yeah.
But we're going to dictate how it goes because we all want to go home at the end of the day, and we want the public to be safe as well.
Most of the time, are they there? Is it rare when, like after you've been working on a case and you've done surveillance and you think, okay, I know Andy Cunt's going to be at this location at this time, and you go and he's not? Does that happen a lot?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, those types of cases are even more rare. It's usually like you're starting at ground zero and they're not even, in the area anymore. Like they may have fled our area and go to like another city where we're sending a collateral to that city, and we rely heavily on, our task forces around the country to help us in that endeavor. The thing is, what makes us really successful with the Marshal Service and our task forces is that it's the participation as a force multiplier with multiple agencies that are part of these task forces. And we have that conduit to another district task force within minutes for them to be able and to follow up on information that we may have.
How do you decide when, let's say that the person you're looking for, they are in Arkansas, they're in Little Rock. How do you decide which cases you're going to go get them and bring them back, as opposed to you make a phone call to a task force there and say, hey, can you pick up so-and-so?
So it's pretty, I know we've got like, The Fugitive and the U.S. Marshals, the movie and stuff, where Tommy Lee's traveling all over the place.
Right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that. Now, we do have some cases where the lead investigators will, travel on some of those, like top 15 most wanted. As the case agent, you'll see that thing through.
Sure. But it's a tax-funded entity, so you have to kind of put that in the back of your mind. I'm sure that the
Right.
cost of things. And,
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the most important thing is getting this person in the handcuffs.
Right.
And it's not who does it; it's just really making sure that apprehension happens. So
How does somebody make the top 10 most wanted list?
top 15? So
Top
with
15
Somebody
Yeah.
wants to, sounds like to me.
well, there's
Sounds like a
15
bucket
now,
list.
Okay.
there's criteria with our agency, but once you catapult a fugitive, obviously it's going to be violent in nature.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we can throw as much assets and resources through the Marshal Service that we can. That usually comes with higher reward money and a lot more media exposure on it. And then the deputy that's typically assigned to a top 15, that's going to be his or her case.
Yeah.
So,
Would you follow it through the trial too? Would you be called to testify or no?
sometimes we are. That's another great thing about this agency. Our work is literally hide and seek. It's hide and seek with guns sometimes, unfortunately. But we're going after somebody that's already been charged. We're not trying to prove what this person did or didn't do. We already have a warrant in our hand,
Right.
and our job is just to go and locate, apprehend, get them booked in, and then we're on to the next one. Sometimes you're lucky; you might arrest 3 or 5 different, 3 to 5 fugitives a day. I mean, because you've been working on them collectively over a period of time, and now tips start coming in, and it'll happen for you. But once they're in custody and they've been booked in, maybe 5% of the time we'll have to follow up on the court side. It's
Yeah.
usually issues regarding like identity; they're fighting
Sure.
their identity,
Yeah.
or
If you have people that are co-defendants,
Mm-hmm.
like you've got 3 people that committed a violent crime, and you've got them charged. I mean, I guess you'd have to go get them all kind of at the same times, or so because you wouldn't want somebody to, hey, they're coming after us.
well, I mean, of course, timing is everything. We would love to be able to get all 3 right at the same date and time, but sometimes that's not even possible. I mean, we're going to take what we can get, and once we have the case, that's another good thing about the Marshal Service is unless the courts dispose of it through a dismissal, it's just going to get reassigned from deputy to deputy to deputy until they're captured. It never will go away.
One of the things that we've noticed in the last few years, and I don't know if it's singular to Harris County, is you have defendants who are actually sentenced, but because they just didn't show up at trial, or they showed up at trial the first day
And then leave.
and said, yeah, this isn't looking too good. In the meantime, they get, we have a couple guys on the Crime Stoppers that got 45 years in prison that are still wanted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I've not seen that, I don't know if that's a recent phenomenon that we're seeing, people that are not, that are out on bond, or they have a trial schedule and they get convicted, but they're gone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sometimes the original charge, even before they were ever sentenced, somebody at the task force was already probably looking for them.
Yeah.
So usually we'll reassign it to the same guy because of, the familiarity with the case.
You have a fascinating career, and everybody should be thankful for what you do, because every day you're basically putting your life on the line when you go to work.
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure to serve the community in this facet. This agency has such great history. We were established in 1789.
Yeah.
Back when President George Washington was in office. So it's been a great honor to work for it.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us. This was fascinating. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You guys have the same kind of hair. I feel kind of left. I don't know. I'm trying to stick
Like,
something
stick it
up
up.
here, but I can't do it.
Hey, thank you all for watching, and remember, have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We will see you in 2025, and be kind to yourself and everyone else.
Later.